Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first international webinar on the topic TwinCAT PLC and especially the difference between TwinCAT 2 PLC and TwinCAT 3 PLC. If you have questions, it's easy. You can use the question box inside the webinar window. And so you can ask questions and we will try to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. So this is the agenda. So we will start with the new features for TwinCAT 3 PLC. I will give you an overview of the different advantages and the different new things in TwinCAT 3 PLC. Then of course everyone is asking, can I reuse my TwinCAT 2 project? And of course this is possible. And also on this topic I will give you some information. And of course I will end up with a summary. So we start with the new features in TwinCAT 3 PLC. And first of all, this is an overview what is new for PLC programmers in TwinCAT 3. And first of all, what everyone is seeing directly is that we are now integrated in the Visual Studio shell. So we have a new tree, which is located on the left side normally. And we have a consistent data handling, means that we do not have two different tools. So we do not have the separation in PLC programming and the PLC control and the system configuration in the system manager. Now it's all integrated in one Visual Studio shell. And you do not have to buy the Visual Studio itself as a PLC programmer. It's not necessary. If you install TwinCAT 3 full version, then we automatically install a Visual Studio shell, which is in the moment the Visual Studio 2010 shell. We have with this a new look and feel, and so we have the tree, the system manager tree and the PLC tree in one tree combined, and of course you have also the possibility to do the safety configuration, the safety programming, and if you want also C++ programming in the same environment. For the PLC programmers, we have additional functionality. So we have new reviewed editors. So all the editors of different languages are reviewed and are modern. We will see this later on. And we have completely new debugging functionality. And this is one of the main things which is new in TwinCAT 3 PLC is the object-oriented programming, which is possible and which is not mandatory. So you can use it if you want. To do effective software engineering, it might make sense to use source code control tools, which are easily integrated in the Visual Studio shell. So you can use Team Foundation Server from company Microsoft or a Subversion system with different things like GIT or Mercurial. And we have also new features in the runtime. So this is the support of 64-bit operating systems. So with TwinCAT 3, it's possible to download the PLC code also on a 64-bit operating system. And with this, you have a lot of more possibilities, especially if you need more and more memory. And we support multi-core. And multi-core is, you know this from the standard PLCs from the laptops, is coming up. So we have more and more cores. And you can decide which task, also which PLC task, can be or should be executed on which core. And of course, last but not least, of course, you can convert TwinCAT 2 projects into TwinCAT 3 environment. So we start with the overview of the editors. So they are completely new, modern look and feel, Windows look and feel, and we have different new functionalities. So we have this new auto-declare with type detection, which makes life easier if you have a new variable and you want to install this new variable, to declare this new variable. We have extended IntelliSense functionality. So IntelliSense shows directly also subtypes of structures. You see this in the screenshot on the bottom. We have an auto-completion of the text blocks. We have automatic indentation. You can, if you want, display brackets or blocks which belong together. So you see this on the right side. So if you put the cursor to the if, you directly see the block and if. And this also works, of course, for brackets. We have new folding of lines. and this can be seen also on the bottom. So if you want, you can see for a better overview, you can fold lines. You see this with the plus sign, and of course you can unfold them clicking to the plus sign. Search and replace is also reviewed, so we have a new search and replace with regular terms, and we have also the possibility of block marking. So a lot of new functionality in the new PLC editors, especially of course for structured text. Also new, and also a wish, long wish from a lot of PLC programmers, is that we now have one editor for 3 languages. And the advantage is that you can easily switch between languages. So if you start in function block diagram, it's one click to switch to ladder diagram. If you start in instruction list, you can also switch to function block diagram or ladder diagram. And this is possible online and offline without compilation, of course, so without an online change. So it's only a view to the same source code. If it's not possible to convert, then of course you see different languages in one view. So sometimes it's not possible to convert instruction list commands directly to function block diagram or ladder diagram. Also new is the SFC editor. So first of all, it's easier to start with SFC function blocks. So you can easily start with step, 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 and then insert the transitions. And this without a syntax check. Of course, when you do the compile or when you want to save, there is a syntax check. But from the beginning, it's easier to start with SFC. And also new is the handling of transitions. So it's now possible to reuse transitions. This also makes life easier. So you once define a transition, give the transition a name, and you can reuse this inside the SFC block. And also, which is not new, but it's more and more extended, is the use of pragmas. So pragmas itself are defined in the IEC 61131 standard. And of course, Beckhoff did some specific extensions for special purposes. And pragmas can be used for variables or blocks of variables, but also for POUs. And one example is given below. So this is an example where conditional compile is used. So you may know this from C++ or from C. If you want to compile different things in one source code, you have to use a conditional compile, and this is now possible using the pragmas to define which line of code should be compiled and which should be not compiled. And very new is also the handling of libraries, and this is specific, and a lot of advantages are by using this kind of libraries. So first of all, libraries now have versions, and the versions are directly compiled into the library. So it's not the date and time, which we're using in TwinCAT 2. It's really the version inside the library. And with this versioning, you can generate compatible code with fixed versions. So the idea is to use, also if you deliver the machine, set to the libraries to fixed versions, and then you really be sure that you can compile compatible code with these fixed versions of libraries. Libraries are identified by the name, of course, by the company name and by the version. And of course, this needs an installation of libraries, but it's very easy. So it's one click to install a library. The library itself is stored in a repository, which is a kind of database. And on your hard disk, it's a set of folders. So one folder for each library and one folder for each version of a library. If you want, you can use namespaces. So you can define a namespace for a library, and then you can access members of the library with namespace.member, which makes life easier. So if you want, you can really use different versions of one library in one project. And then, of course, you have to separate the different versions with namespaces. So different versions of one lib are possible in an installation. Yes, of course. So they're located on the hard disk. And you can also use different versions of a library in one project if you want. So version 1, version 2, and of course you need namespaces for version 1, version 2, and then you can access with namespace.member to different function blocks or data types. Beckhoff has decided to deliver all libraries with default placeholders. So placeholder is a method which you can use to change versions very easily, especially if a library uses another library, and you want to exchange a version because there's a bug fix perhaps inside a version, and you want to exchange version 1 with version 2 without recompiling all the libraries. So placeholders are really making life easier for a version handling with a set of libraries, with own libraries and Beckhoff libraries. We deliver our libraries with standard placeholders. This means the placeholder name is similar to the name of the library, which is easier to find. Of course, you can rename this, and of course, you can also set placeholders in the next version also for your own libraries. And Beckhoff uses per default a star attribute, which means we are delivering all of our libraries not with a fixed version. We are delivering our libraries with use the latest and newest version of a library. But of course, if you want, you can also set the Beckhoff libraries to a fixed version. And Beckhoff delivers only compiled libraries. So this is a pre-compilation. So it is faster in loading and faster in compiling. But of course, you can decide how you want to handle your own libraries. So on the next slides, a few screenshots about library handling. So first of all, our libraries are located under the node references. So a reference is a reference to a library, and you see different libraries, and I click on one of the libraries, the TC2 Utilities library, which you see the name, the title, you see the version, you see the company, Beckhoff Automation, and you see a short description, what is inside the library. And then of course you can have a look to the different components inside the library. So here you see one checksum 16 function, which is in the graphical view and also in the documentation view can be seen. So the set of libraries you have to choose from the repository, and inside the repository we have all the libraries and of course all the different versions of the libraries. So when you insert a new library, then you can do this with categories. So you find different categories. So the Beckhoff categories are communication, controller, data access, internal, I/O, and so on. Inside the categories you find different libraries, and inside the libraries you find a library with the name and of course the library with the version, and you have to select the version. Debugging is also new, and so one of the first things you see is that we now have for structured text a debugging which is really inside the code. So you see the variable sdstruct.be my first component, and directly behind this variable name you see the actual value, and this is true in the moment. And of course this can also be seen for different variables of different data types, and of course also for strings. The size of the area where the value is located can be set directly so that you can have also bigger or smaller blocks. PowerFlow is also integrated, and this can be seen with the green blocks or the white blocks. So green block means this line of code is executed. White block means this line of code is not executed. You see this in the sample. So on the left side you see, okay, the B switch is false, so the line 4 is not executed, it's white. On the right side you see B switch is true, and the line 4 of course is executed. Also the handling of writing and forcing variables is reviewed. You see this on the top in the declaration part. Also new is that we have of course, breakpoints. So this is also the same as we have in TwinCAT 2, but we now have also conditional breakpoints, which means you can set a conditional breakpoint. For example, in a loop from 1 to 100, you would need a breakpoint at a loop counter 50. Then in TwinCAT 2, you have to 50 times press F5, and now you can say, okay, break when the hit count is equal to, and then you can set 50, and then the breakpoint is really set on the 50th loop and not before and not after. So this makes life easier for debugging code. And one of the big topics inside TwinCAT 3 PLC is, of course, the integration of object-oriented extensions. And this is not a Beckhoff invention. It is really standardized in the ISC 61131-3 third edition, and this is released since the beginning of last year. So it's really in the standard, so it's an international standard, and it's a release standard. And what is the benefit of using object-oriented extensions? It makes, if you do it in the right way, a more readable code by encapsulation of algorithms in different methods. So this increases the maintainability of code, and also, of course, the reusability of code by doing encapsulation of algorithms and function blocks in classes. It's possible to use interfaces, kind of abstract class, which increase the extensibility and also the adaptability of code. And of course, if you want, you can also use inheritance, which means you start with the base class, the base function block, and you can derive a special function block, a special class. And if you also use this, then we think that it makes life easier. It will increase the software quality, and with increasing software quality, it will decrease time for programming and maintenance, so saving cost for engineering. But of course, it takes time to look to your TwinCAT 2 PLC code to do it in an object-oriented way. So it takes time, but I think it will save cost in the future. So what are the new keywords of object-oriented extensions? So one of the keywords is method, and this is a method is like a function which is directly used on an FB. So an FB has a method, and you can call the method via FB instance.method name. But the methods have also own variables, and it can also have attributes like private and public. So it's comparable to the action which we have in TwinCAT 2, but it's really not the same because we have own variables and we have attributes and we have the calling conventions of a function. We have also properties, which means you have access to variables inside a class from outside. So get the set method. So with the get method, you get the value out of the instance, out of the object, and the set method, you can, from the outside, set a value inside the class or the instance. We have two new keywords to access components in the own class, so in the instance, this pointer, and we have a super pointer or super operator where you can access the components of the base class. So if you want to use a method which is located in the base class, then you can use the super operator to execute this method in the base class, also from the derived class. We have extends, which is inheritance between function blocks. So you have a base function block, and you derive to a special function block with the keyword extends. And then we have two new keywords in the area of abstract classes. So this is, first of all, the definition of an abstract class, so the interface definition. This is comparable to a function block without implementation. So you define the members of the function block, you define the methods in the function block, you define the properties, but you do not really code the methods and the rest of the function block. You do this while you implement the interface into a function block, and in this function block, then you really have to code this. We have special methods, so FB init, which is like a constructor, so it's executed while starting we have an FB exit, which is a destructor, which is executed while stopping or shutting down the PLC. And we have a special method, this is FB reinit, which is executed after an online change. And this is interesting, so if you really use pointers and addresses inside your code, you can define a FB reinit method and get new addresses in the FB reinit method after an online change. So this is all about object-oriented programming, and we will also have a webinar on this topic in the next time. And also a big difference from TwinCAT 2 to TwinCAT 3 is that it's now possible to integrate the complete PLC code and also the configuration into source code control tools. For example, you know Microsoft Team Foundation Server or Subversion, which are often used, and we think this is helpful to use this kind of tools in big projects, in big teams, of course, and also if you want to have a product lifecycle management of your source code. And this requires, of course, that all the components which are stored in the source code control tools are in readable files, means in ASCII files or in XML files. And we do this for the PLC by using the PLC Open XML standard. So we store all the PLC components, all the objects in single XML files. So every function block is a single XML file, and the standard behind is the PLC Open XML standard. And by the way, we do the same for the configuration. So also the configuration is stored in one XML file if you want, but you can also extend it to different XML files. And of course, C and C++ and Matlab Simulink are stored in ASCII and in XML files. And these files, so on the engineering PC, can very easily integrate it in source code management tools. If you have different versions of your project in a source code control tool, then of course you also want to compare version 1 with version 2. And for this, you need a compare tool. And this is a single tool, so it's a TwinCAT compare tool, which compares a complete solution with all the PLC and I/O stuff integrated, and also motion control, of course. But you can also use this to compare single function blocks. So here we see a complete compare of a complete solution. So on the left side, original solution, on the right side, the solution which should be compared. And you see differences. You see differences in settings, so task settings. You see difference in I/Os, and of course you also see the difference in some function blocks. And if you double click on one of the function blocks, for example written in function block diagram, then you see the difference directly in the language. So in function block diagram, you see that on the left side we have an OR, and on the right side we have an AND, and the red box around the OR means really this is the difference. So this is all about the new features of the PLC, and of course we have more and more features. And second topic in this webinar today is also the way how to convert projects from TwinCAT 2 to TwinCAT 3. And this is very easy. It's really, you start with a new project, and there's a topic load project from TwinCAT 2 version. Then you start this. And first of all, you are asked for the TSM file, where is it located? And if in the TSM file, a TPY file is integrated, and which is also located in the same path, or in the relative path, and also the project is also located in the same path, then you can directly convert configuration and PLC in one step. If you want to convert only PLC stuff, then it's also very easy. You add an existing item to the PLC node, and you look for PLC projects. So you can also, of course, convert libraries from TwinCAT 2 to TwinCAT 3. But in this case, it's a project. Then you convert this, and normally, for 99% of the projects, it's done automatically. But you have to keep in mind that we need projects for TwinCAT 2, which can be compiled also in TwinCAT 2. So the code, the project, has to be compilable with the TwinCAT 2 PLC control, otherwise it's not possible to convert the code. And of course, if your PLC code needs libraries, then you have to convert the libraries before. So all of the Beckhoff libraries are converted and stored in the repository, of course. We have some libraries we put together in one, and we have, of course, a list of libraries which are in the TwinCAT 2 available and which have also a library in TwinCAT 3. You have to do this once, also for your own libraries, and of course you have to convert the libraries, and the libraries have also be compilable with the TwinCAT 2 PLC control. A special hint for the visualization, so the visualization from TwinCAT 2 to TwinCAT 3, so the PLC visualization changed a little bit. So we have for placeholders, which are used in the visualization, we have a new way of using this, and sometimes it's not possible to convert this 100%. And the second thing is that var and out variables are not more allowed in visualization. So perhaps also on this point, you have to recheck your visualization code. So summary, so we have many new features. So this is also only a short overview of the new features. We will do more webinars on special things, so source code integration and also on different other things. So from the engineering side, we are very proud that we have an integration in Visual Studio, and so that it's the well-known engineering tool, engineering environment for doing software engineering. And of course, we can also make use of the things which are integrated in the Visual Studio, and this is especially the source code control tools support. So we can use this directly without anything in between. We have a new runtime. So the new runtime supports modular software design. We have more performance by using multi-core technology, and you have the ability to make use of the multi-core technology by assigning tasks to cores. And also this is a webinar which we held in the future. And we are future-proof because we also support 64-bit operating system, which will definitely not be available for TwinCAT 2. So the support of TwinCAT 2 runtime for x64-bit operating systems will not be available. We are based on the actual standard, so the IEC 61131-3 3rd edition, which is released last year and which includes object orientation. We talked about this very shortly, but includes also a lot of other definitions and standards. And of course, it's possible to reuse old configurations, so the TSM file can be converted very easily, but it's also possible to convert PLC projects from TwinCAT 2 to TwinCAT 3. So now I'm ready with my presentation, and I will try to answer some questions. So one of the questions is it possible to declare code regions? No, in the moment this is not possible. We support with TwinCAT 3, so the question is what platforms do we support with TwinCAT PLC? So we support, of course, the x86 platforms for XP, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1 on the x86 platforms, but we support also CE, but not on all platforms. We support CE in the moment only on the CX9020. One question is, do we need additional licenses to use Subversion? Yes, you need an additional license, but it's cost-free. So you can download this directly from the Microsoft Marketplace, which is a link inside the Visual Studio. Then you can install this, and it's for Subversion, it's cost-free. The visualization from TwinCAT 2 Is it available also in TwinCAT 3? Yes, it will be available, or it is partly available. So the editor is of course integrated, so you can make new visualizations with the editor, but not available is in the moment, and it will be in 2 weeks, is the standalone visualization. So what we call target visualization, what we call PLC HMI, will be available in 2 weeks for XP platform. And CE and web platform will follow. Does visualization require source project on target? No, this is not anymore necessary. So also on the XP, Windows 7, Windows 8 platform, we do not need the source code on the platform. So it's comparable to the solution we have in TwinCAT 2 with the CE version. So it's directly out of the PLC code, we generate the visualization code. Will performance increase with switching to TwinCAT 3? Yes. So we have a new compiler. The new compiler is optimized, more optimized. It's not 100% faster than the TwinCAT 2 code, but it's dependent, of course, on the code. It's a few percent faster with TwinCAT 3 than with TwinCAT 2. Can we get some sample program how to use the new keywords like this in Super? Yes, of course you can. So sample code for object-oriented programming is available on the internet. So there's a short demonstration how you can use this in a kind of machine with different conveyors, with different motors and drives. I think I'm just through the questions. So TwinCAT 3 is of course compatible also to Windows 8. This is the last question I will try to answer. And I thank you for your attendance, and you will get this internet stream as soon as possible also on the our Beckhoff internet. Bye-bye.